Okay, so
We just gonna roll with it.
we're just gonna bust in it.
Yes.
This is my sister, Chandrea Trotty. And she is a dear sister, and a friend, and
She said yes.
a survivor. And that is our bonus relationship. So I'm thrilled that she said that she wanted to share her story with me. And we're just sitting next to each other to share it with y'all. So literally, you're going to see a whole lot of this right here. You're going to see a whole lot of this right here. Because this is just her telling me her story. And you just get to listen in. So, okay. Thanks, Miss Brandy.
Thank you all for your patience.
Yes, we appreciate it.
All your love and support. Thank you.
Okay, sis, why now?
That's a really good question. I've been working with community, families, individuals for 25 plus years at this point.
Wow.
And I compartmentalize. I show up, I do my job, and I really strive to work on behalf of survivors of violence. Oftentimes I remove myself from that same group that I am advocating for. And I don't think it's been until recently that I understand that I'm also advocating for myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So 25 years, you going hard in the paint. And then one day it's like, wait a minute. I'm included.
I'm
included.
Right.
I'm not just holding this banner up for those nameless, faceless people, but my face. This is for me too.
Absolutely.
How does that change what you feel, think, as you're doing the work now? Because after that light came on, that's something right there.
Yeah. I think it makes me work hard. I've always worked hard. I think I personalize it a lot more.
Okay.
And so I lead with a depthness of heart for all people. However, the times that it clicks that I am that person, as well, I think it drives that much more emotionally for me to continue to do the work. Even when I'm tired, I remember that I'm not just doing this for all of the people that I know, all of the people I don't know, more specifically, all of the Black women I know and all of the Black women I don't know, but the legacy of Black women in my family.
Okay. If you feel like that's something you want to share, we'll dig into that a little bit more. But do you mind if we start all the way back?
Okay.
So, you've been doing this work for 25 years, but how long is the gap between you leaving and being able to leave that situation and the beginning of now I'm working for the folks that look like me?
Oh, that is so funny. I don't think there's been a gap.
Tell me why you say that.
First, I didn't even identify as a survivor until that language was provided to me. So my experiences in victimization have been my whole life. So the first time I personally was victimized was about the age of 4. But growing up in the normalization of violence in a variety of ways, again, I think pretty much my whole life. Acts of violence were very much so diminished as an incident that happened, never thinking about what happened and how it holistically impacts a person. So I don't care if it was a fight in which a schoolmate was humiliated, acts of interpersonal violence in my own family, or my own, me being on the receiving end of that. But something that I don't think a lot of survivors maybe talk about is the perpetuation of that, because I had been violated and I have been hurt physically, like, physical fights. I have also placed that type of harm on other people. I mean, I was a fighter, but I never really thought about how my acts could humiliate or diminish or impact someone holistically. Never once. It was just something that that's what you do.
You do it because
that's what society, community, that's because what you experience, that's what you normalize. I don't care if we're talking about acts of domestic violence or sexual violence. I can think from the time I was a little girl, when I think about physical violence, if somebody hits you, you better hit them back. Somebody get in your space, they get too close to you, and they act like they want it, then you give it to them. And from the time I was a little girl, go give such and such a hug. You ain't see that person there, you give them a hug. And I was taught that, and there's no blame. I want to be very clear of that. It's just that we have normalized. So me having to physically even give myself to someone without my permission was embedded early.
I want to stop there, and I want to just really, really get in on that real quick. So I think we're starting to see it a lot now. I even saw some Facebook posts from one of my friends just recently flow through talking about, hey, let's remember to not push our children into normalizing forced affection with other people. And you just heard my sister say the normalization of victimization. And I think that as a community of Black people, we miss how we are normalizing telling children that their bodies don't belong to them, that they don't have the right to say, I want this much space, or I don't want that person touching me in that way. That is a form of normalization of victimization. Chandrea also said two different things that I want to make sure you understand. Domestic abuse, sexual abuse, right? So sexual assault doesn't necessarily mean that that's somebody that you know. It is an assault that is sexual.
Right.
Okay? Domestic abuse is an intimate partner that you currently have or one that you had in the past.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that your domestic partner or your intimate partner cannot commit sexual abuse against you. But it just means that sexual assault is not necessarily connected to someone that you know or were intimate with. Okay? So I wanted to make sure that you understood those two terms, because she talked about the language. She didn't have language.
Language is powerful. When I first began to name it,
yes,
is when I was faced with really having to unpack the various acts, situations, the normalization, and the expectancy even of acts of harm, and what that meant for me first and foremost, but also what that meant for the folks that I was providing service on behalf of and or walking this journey with. And I don't think cognitive dissonance is real, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
And so when everything that you've learned has to be unlearned and reframed, that is a process that Black women especially don't necessarily have the space to even navigate. The time and or the support to process. And so it's taking a number of years to, and still actively, because abuse can happen so holistically. There is the mental and psychological abuse. There is emotional abuse. There is the physical and the sexual, there's financial, there is social abuse even. There is the ways in which individuals can manipulate your love to get their way. So the coercion even in abuse.
Yes.
And so having to think about what that means for me
yes.
has been, again, a very long journey and a very active journey.
When you look at the journey of that, sis, do you sometimes just go, I see, now that I look back on it, the times where I was actively working on it and the times when I was just like, I'm tired as fuck. I'm not going to work on it right now because it's draining, it's tiring, and I got this to do. I got this responsibility. I got this emotional strength that I need.
Absolutely. Especially as a wife, a mother. My job is to put my emotional labor aside. The emotional labor I must conduct for myself, I put that aside and I make sure that I'm available to the people in my home. And so what happens over a period of time is you become lost in that. So it's, pulling back the Band-Aid ever so often when you have those rare moments to actually sit with yourself. But I have really worked hard to communicate what I need in regard to space so that I can process and try to explain even to friends or, new acquaintances who I am and how I operate, because I work with people all day. And I deal in a very heavy field, and so I need a minute. I'm not ignoring you. Don't take it personal, because we have been conditioned to be available to people all of the time.
No matter what
the cost to you. And so as I have learned to use language like giving other people permission, I had to learn to give myself permission first and be okay with whatever response, I may get in return. Absolutely.
Do you feel like I probably know the answer to this, but I want them to hear your response. Do you feel like there is a decent amount of time where you get the opportunity to deal with what you experience because you practice self-care in that way?
I don't know. Self-care is a hard term for me, sister. I don't know what that means. I don't.
Tell me why you said I don't know what that means.
Because I don't know what that means, because it's been utilized in such a superficial way.
Yes.
And for me, it's about self-discipline. It's not self-care, it's self-discipline.
Okay.
Where have I learned to draw boundaries? Where have I learned to not only my strengths, but my deficits, and how I begin to work in that? What makes me happy? I didn't really understand who I had become until I hit 40. So you're talking about almost 5 years ago, because I had just put my head down. I worked. I knew why I worked. I knew how I showed up. I took care of my home. And then I woke up one day because one son left the nest. Another son is socially like, Mom, feed me, and I'm out. My husband we're both the same age, so he's figuring out what he wants to do for the next leg of his journey. And guess what? I was all alone. And I went through this summer of discontent. And when I mean all alone, just meaning like everyone was doing their own thing, whereas I had been doing everything with everyone, right?
Yeah.
But now everybody's off doing their own thing. And so I had to figure out who I was all over again. I call it my summer of discontent.
For real.
Because I was like, I don't know what to do. No one needs me.
Wow.
What do I do? What do I do with that? And then I was like, oh, you need you. Imagine that concept.
Imagine that.
Imagine that concept.
No one needs me. What do I do?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that on a judgmental level.
Right.
I'm saying that as a, I get it level.
Yeah.
But that's so unfair.
It is so
We're
unfair.
We're so conditioned that our reason for survival, for existence, is service.
It is
And so if no one needs me, gee whiz, who am I? It's
What
like,
am I?
what do you mean?
And it's like, no, serve you.
You need you.
I need you.
Yes.
I need you.
Yes.
Figure, take some time and genuinely, intentionally, and purposefully figure out who you are and what you need to be healthy. Mind, heart, body, and spirit.
Do you feel like that journey led you to this moment right here?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the past several years, I come from a work that is very liberal, and the work in victim services has been professionalized, and so people led with a lot of intellect and worked, and I've worked until I received that position. I have worked historically for and by small nonprofit organizations, Black folk, right? And so then I enter this world of, this is great. There's terms to what I do, because we just serve folk. What I mean? We just serve people. What you need, resources. So there's this terminology. And so you can easily get caught in the professionalization and the intellectualization of human experience. And I would try hard to keep I made an effort to keep my feet planted firmly on the ground so that I remembered the experiences that I not only witnessed, but was a part of, right? And, that, I think, in listening to other folks, and I don't say that like pat myself on the back, but I had a moral and ethical obligation that as I entered spaces that I knew people, my peers, my loved ones would never have the opportunity to sit in these spaces to provide tables, whether it was through being a speaker, right? Whether it was through being on a committee, whether it was through a phone conference, because folks needed to hear what was truly happening on the ground, not just what folks were thinking about Black women and their experience in their mind. And so during those moments is when I was like, one day I'll talk about my why.
Yes.
That I stay not only in this work, but how I kind of fell in the background too, so that I can take care of myself all at the same time.
That's a lot to navigate.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah. That's a lot. Wow. So you said, I'm going to talk about...
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I got one of, and because of our history, one of my closest long-term friends is on. And
thank you for being there.
She don't know it. We don't talk a whole lot. You got that one friend that it don't matter how much time or space is in between you.
Absolutely.
There's a deep connection that cannot be broken.
Yeah.
That is her. And she doesn't know that she's a huge reason why I do this work.
Wow.
Huge reason.
Tell her.
You're a huge reason why I do this work. We've just been through so much together, and our situations for many years mirrored each other.
Wow.
She would come out and I would go in. And I think, being able to see that is a gift. And then not only that, but when you maintain true friendships 30 plus years,
wow,
that's a gift.
Yes, it is.
And it's rare.
It's very rare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very rare. Wow. And that says something about both of you and the type of women that you are.
Yes.
Because when
the growth,
when it's still right here, after 30 years, right here solid, linked up.
I don't care how long this been.
That's saying a whole lot.
Absolutely.
A whole lot.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to share your why, because I remember you and I were sitting down talking. I'm like, well, what is it you want people to get out of this? What do you want? Number one, who do you want to get something out of this? And then what do you want them to get?
Who is anyone that's listening or who I have had contact with, and the who is whoever.
Okay.
Right? The who is whoever. And the second part of your question is what?
What do you want them to get? What do you want them to be able to take from it if they forget everything else?
Yeah.
What do you want them to be able to open up later and look at it again and still have that clear thing? What's that?
I want everyone to take away that you're worth your healing. It's worth it to heal. It is the most liberating feeling to know that you can walk in authenticity, that your smile is not fake, you're not putting on for anyone, that your boundaries are respected, that the people who understand and love you most in your totality, that is the rare experiences of unconditional love, and to cherish that. But when you can be true to yourself, then you understand who is also then true to you. Yes. But you got to be true to you first.
To recognize that.
So I would just in short tell folks that it's worth it to take care of your heart, because it is not the responsibility of others. It is your responsibility to take care of your heart first and foremost.
You're worth your own healing.
Yeah. You got to you owe it. We all owe it to ourselves to heal.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. How do you do that? You started at 4. I have one memory as a 4-year-old starting to learn how to play the piano. Everything else as a 4-year-old, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
So we're talking really, really young.
Yeah.
How do you heal from that? And from what I'm gathering, that wasn't the only instance.
No.
How do you heal from that?
That's really loaded, sister. That's really loaded. Your comment I'll address first. 4 was the first time, very suppressed until I came face to face with the person who had sexually molested me, and I was 17. And when I say those memories flooded me, it was, the mind is powerful.
Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it is.
And then a very long years of abuse between the age of 10 to 15. And it wasn't until I was 20 years old, and I was went to a party and I got drunk and I was raped, and it was the same friend that I was telling you about that said to me, he raped you. And I couldn't even understand what it is that she was said. And then even after that, I just diminished it and I downplayed it, and I wanted to move past it. And then it was shortly thereafter that I entered into a relationship of domestic violence. And so the healing has been, I think, despite the incidents of abuse, I've had some of the most beautiful Black women ever in my life, generationally. And I will start with my grandmothers. I had 2 very strong women who imparted wisdom in very different ways, but words that I could draw on.
Okay.
And then my grandfather reminded me that all men were not that way. He was the one grounding male in my life growing up that reminded me that, as a man as we know it, right, in very traditional gender roles, but that he was not that way, right? Like all men were not that way.
Yeah.
And then my mother, who, it's hard to talk about mom, that's, but my mother is one of the most strongest. To me, she's a superwoman. She's a superhero. And I watched her fight for the livelihood, not only of herself, but for her daughters. She made sure that she paved the way for my sister, and then my sister. And happy birthday to my sister if she watched that, right?
Happy birthday, Queen.
Yes, and I chose this day intentionally because it's her birthday.
Yes.
But she's also been the one of a few people in my life that was never scared to tell me the truth, even if it hurt. And as I grew, I had, even if for a season, I had Black women who would come, and I didn't know it then. That's the funny part. Reflection. I think about Miss Cheatham when I got in trouble as a juvenile and had given me a second chance, but not recognizing, but into my 30s, what a gift having a second chance really was, and that I was getting that in so many ways in my life. You know, Pastor Tammy Harris, she put me into social service in a very different way. I was a community organizer, but when she started the social ministry, very pivotal in how I began my career in case management, right? As we know it. Gerald Brantley, you had a lot of community folk that came into my life and gave me a chance, right? And then I got into a group where I gained the language. So I understood what was happening, but I didn't have the language. And that is when I started to parse a piece not just who I am, but what shaped me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What was toxic and what was good, and the importance of separating that and sitting in what was good and healing it, but confronting head on what was toxic and why, and the importance of getting rid of that. You know.
Do you feel like that sorting process makes you a more fierce tool in the anti-violence movement because of your own sorting process? Do you feel like that makes you sharper what it is you do?
Absolutely, because I work again in a very professionalized field, and I get to say with surety and confidence that the way you're looking at this is not the way it is. It's not effective. The resources that you are handing out aren't reaching the people that I'm talking about. Even when I will challenge folks and say, when you think of a victim, who are you envisioning? Because imagery is powerful. Who are you envisioning? I guarantee the person you're envisioning does not look like the person I'm envisioning, depending on who I'm talking to, of course. But for the most part, they are envisioning probably a college age white girl who comes from a middle upper class family who has access to the resources that should be reaching the ground. But when I envision, because that's the model victim, but when I envision a survivor of sexual assault, domestic violence, any act of violence for that, homicide, right, any violent crime, I am envisioning what this society has deemed the most least lost and forgotten. I am envisioning a Black woman or a Black person who is probably trying to cope through substance abuse or is trying to cope in some other unhealthy ways, right? I'm thinking about the woman who doesn't even know these resources exist. We have so much out here, yet I blow folks' minds probably daily when I talk about what I do, and they go, they got that?
Right. See? Yep.
What's an advocate? You know? I remember the first time I heard safety planning, sister. I said, the hell is that?
Right. Yep.
Who was safety planning? If my friend's man kicked her ass. That was what we said. Girl, we got into it. I'm like, I can't stand that bastard. And we go out and drink.
Right. Yep.
That was the safety plan.
Yeah. To forget about it.
Absolutely. Because you know what? One of us was going back later that night anyway. If it was an incident of, for lack of better words, date rape, but non-consensual sexual contact, then it too was diminished.
Absolutely.
That old creep, I didn't want to do it anyway, but I'm like, let's get this over with. That is not okay. That is sexual assault. Because something in you, fear, something in you prohibited you from saying no, standing on it and leaving. You went through with it anyway. Why? Because you was taught early your body wasn't your own. I'm just saying, it takes a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. And when you're standing in this room having these conversations in the work that you do, how many times, well, I guess a better question is, what do you do with, because I already know what happens. What do you do with it after you realize you were talking to a brick wall? It didn't go anywhere and nobody got it. Everyone patted themselves on the back for their solutions that they coined for the model victim. And then everybody was looking at each other like, look what we did. Everybody closed their cute little notebooks. What do you do with that?
I speak up because I have a moral and ethical obligation to make sure that the folks who don't even know we exist, and I'm talking about victim service providers as a whole, we are influencing decisions, we are creating laws, we are birthing and developing services that do not fit the folk that I'm talking about. I have an ethical and moral obligation to challenge and interrupt the status quo, because it is. And then what will happen is they say, well, we don't have women of color. Well, we're not serving males of color. So check a box and then we're done. No, if you really want to create equitable services, I'll know when we've gained some traction, when really everyone, right? Like it's publicly known, like McDonald's. I want victim services and resources to be looked like the corner McDonald's. That's when I know we've gained traction in communities of color, Black communities. Yeah.
When the people that are doing the work, I love the way you talk about it. You talk about the aunties.
Yes.
And you talk about the centers of trust in our communities that don't look like the whole, storefront. It's not a storefront. It's that one sister, it's that one church mother, it's that one lady that, everybody goes and she fixes their hymns, or she puts buttons on their stuff, or she fixes zippers. It's that person. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
She's the one people are gonna go. When she knows that y'all exist, then we've gone somewhere.
Because that's where I still get my healing from. I'm in this work. And do you know I get my healing from my auntie in Waterloo?
See?
I call her.
See?
And she's imparting knowledge. My mama, right? My homegirls. Because I still got the homegirls, right?
But now, none of these people have language.
No.
None of these people have funding.
Nope.
None of that. But that's where you're getting your healing.
That's where I'm getting my healing. Because why? Because there's shared understanding and there's commonality. In our situations, our circumstances, the things that we have endured, they all meet at the intersections. We are interconnected by our community experience, our family experience. So I don't have to utilize jargon in order to be in true community with people. That is the huge disconnect though for me, sister, because I will go to work and I will hear about how we should center this person, and we will go down the check mark, right? We'll go down this checklist. We want to serve Black women who are survivors of domestic and violence and sexual assault, who have been substance abuse, impacted. They have a substance abuse disorder. whether they have some type of disability. There's a whole checklist so we can get the most marginalized people. We want to serve the most marginalized folks. And I'm sitting there going, and the person in the room who has met all of your check marks, I gotta fight for you to believe what I said. I am a Black woman who is a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault, who is an addict in recovery, who is on a journey to healing, who is still very much so connected with the people. Just because I look different on paper doesn't change who I am or where I come from or my experiences. And that's the part that gets lost in translation. I shouldn't have to disclose in order to be believed.
That part. And we've talked about before that since we know that you shouldn't have to, but we know that you do, we talked about why. Like the shock factor does it, the jolt that allows empathy to start creeping out, or even sympathy to start creeping out.
Yep.
When you've seen that happen in those circles, do you see it sustained?
It depends on the circle. In macro view, no. That's bad, but no. Because the thing of it is, and I tend to sound a little pessimistic when it comes to getting white women to understand our experiences. And I want to say, when I say that, I guess I have to make it clear too, because there's race and class, and then there's race, class, and the intersections. And depending on where you fall on the class spectrum, we know that also impacts your experience as a person of color in general, right?
Absolutely.
mean, because, right, we know that with money comes different privileges.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's factual. And so I say that to just say, white women will try to intellectualize oftentimes an experience, and some come with the best intention, don't get me wrong, they really do. But because you cannot experience it, because you can't really, there is no way for you to walk, right? I mean, in those circumstances, it's easy to let it fall off your radar, or let the mission of centering, again, specifically Black women, fall off your radar, because you ain't Black. And we just start there, let alone if you was Black, poor, in foster care, drug addicted parents, whatever, we could name so many of sadly typical situations. But if if you've not experienced those things, except poverty, because that's what I will hear. Well, I grew up poor. But if we walked in the room, you still would be given access to services I never would. So no, it doesn't sustain, because it doesn't have to.
The privilege of not having to look at it after the project, the meeting, the phone call,
Absolutely.
the conference.
I've met less than a handful of, and again, lack of better words, because I'm over a lot of jargon, but I've met less than a handful of white women allies, specifically less than a handful in all of these years, that truly make it their purpose to be actively anti-racist. Always utilizing positions of access and privilege and influence to speak on behalf or bring to attention issues that are happening in Black community. Less than a handful.
In 25 years.
In 25 years, absolutely.
And I'm just going to say whatever could sound extra unpopular. You don't experience it because it's not happening. And so it's not a thing of trying to be, Black people are always not giving us a chance, and it's not even that. It's just, it's not happening. So that's just the facts of the matter.
Yep.
Let's just start with where we are, and then we can get to where we want to be.
Absolutely. I don't know. I love what I do. I'll tell anyone I didn't choose this work. This work chose me. I wanted to be a surgical tech.
Really?
I did. I wanted to be a surgical tech, and then I got a drug charge at 18, and that changed everything. Then I lied to the judge and told him I was going to the Marine Corps, even though I knew I was just gonna go hang out in the streets. And my mom, bless her, she probably got permanent scars on her knees from praying so hard. But she gave me an opportunity to become a community organizer, youth organizer. And
so that's how you got started.
That's how I got started in the work. Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of evolved from there. It just evolved from there.
Yes.
It was beautiful. So it just took off.
It took off from there.
It just took off, and I did not choose. In 25 years, the Creator has been so good to me. In 25 years, I've had to apply for a job twice.
Wow. Everything else came to you.
Came to me.
See?
Came to me.
Wow. There's something that Chandrea said a little bit earlier in our conversation that I want to come back to right now, because she talked about how it chose her. So you remember how she talked about looking at abuse, looking at toxicity, making sure that she separated what was good from what was toxic. What is interesting is that we want to separate, and then we want to try to make stuff disappear, though. And what is beautiful, and y'all know how I am about abuse reparations. You know how I am. What is beautiful about her journey is that if you look at some of the milestones in it, you can't deny that she wouldn't be where she is if it hadn't been for the toxicity, if it hadn't been for the abuse, if it hadn't been for the drug charge. Because without the drug charge, she would have met the judge, and then she wouldn't have ended up getting rerouted to this work that she never even thought about doing.
I don't even like people like that.
See? I'm joking. And boom, here it is. Look, now don't even get me started. That's a real statement. That's authentic. It's like, I don't even like people like that. Now, I'm going to tell you what I heard. As another Black woman, I don't like bullshit, but I'm here to get good work done for people who need somebody to get the work done for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I heard. See, but you can't run off down the street with that and take us at face value. You have to listen to what we're saying, and then listen to the part we didn't say.
Yeah.
And hear all of what it is we're saying to you. Man, that's real talk. Did I miss any?
Yeah, there's a few
questions
going there. I don't know.
Let's see. I don't even know.
We're working off the phone, y'all.
Yeah, it's unattractive, but we're gonna see what I had missed.
Nope. It doesn't look like no questions.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we still here.
Okay, we still here. Look, and because we on my phone, I can't even see what my time's at. So where we at?
We right there. Just a few
right there?
minutes over.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, man, as Black women, one of the things that I heard my sister say more than once, and no, I did not coach her, but of course permission came in there, y'all. What? Permission. It always gets in there, don't it? She gave herself permission at several stages of her journey, and she gives herself permission repeatedly even today. So let's walk through some of those moments right quick. In the very beginning stages of healing, she gave herself permission to look at it for what it was. Black women, I need us to stop telling ourselves that victimization is not victimization. She gave herself permission to be honest.
Absolutely.
I have been victimized. And when I say be honest, you notice I didn't say admit, because admit would imply some sort of wrongdoing on your part. Let's be clear, a crime or crimes, plural, were committed against you. You didn't do anything wrong.
That's right.
Okay? Victimization is nothing that I finally had to admit to myself. No, you didn't. You gave yourself permission to be honest by realizing you had been victimized. Why is that important? Because if you never see the victimization, you can't get to the healing, beautifuls. You can't heal from something that never happened, right? Come on.
Yep.
And look, I'm going to just put her on blast. Who came into the room speaking of healing? She might not come on camera. She might, I don't know, but she want to come on camera. I ain't going. She said no. She waved at me like, girl, bye. Brianne Ward, this is the beautiful space that we're in. You see Dr. Sandra McGee is on the wall. If you can tell for her from this part of her. But yes, healing spaces. But you don't even know that you need to get into a healing space if you don't know you've been harmed. So please give yourself permission to see yourself as a victim. It does not mean, look, have you been watching this video? She went through victimization, but I don't think you see a not strong woman here, okay? Unless, I don't know what you was watching if you saw that.
There's a question.
Question. Ooh, yes, ma'am.
Can I answer that?
Yes, Crystal. Chandrea got the answer for you. Where do you go?
The question is, if I need help, where do I go? Who do I call to tap into the resources that are available that I haven't heard of?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer this question, and very important as we talk about it, I'm supposing. First of all, every state and U.S. territory has a coalition. I want to start there, okay? There is traditionally funded services, and that is this line. Every state and U.S. territory has a statewide sexual assault or domestic violence coalition. Some states have dual, so a sexual assault and domestic violence. All of those coalitions have member affiliates or program affiliates. That means that they serve the state. They will give you a list of resources for whatever sexual assault or rape crisis center and or domestic violence shelter is in your state, from end to end, from top to bottom. You ask more specifically about the resources that you have not heard of. And that is what we are talking about right now. There are so many services happening, faith-based services, those small grassroots organizations that are on the corner. And we have to start spreading word about the our experiences in group healing. You know, I'm talking about those spaces in the basement of the churches. I'm talking about those coffees and teas that have become normalized, right? Like we having coffee every second Tuesday of the month. That's not just having coffee. Those are therapy sessions.
Come through.
Okay. When you are, you know, that favorite cousin, auntie, granny, meemaw, whoever it is inviting you over for, because she made a 7-Up cake and some coffee. No, I'm inviting you to a space of healing, right? And so we have to start to kind of formalize even the most non-traditional ways in which we are receiving assistance. And the resources, we've got to push these traditional, the ones with more money, to actually start incorporating some of those non-traditional resources within their lists so that folks know that they are available for help. So that's the short version. But one, here in Des Moines, you all, it's Courageous Access LLC, and we sit in the space of Forward Consulting LLC, Black woman-owned therapy, who has a building full of clinicians, to your choosing and liking, okay? So we've got two right here, just right here. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do other social media, but I'm on LinkedIn, and you ask, I will do everything I can to find what you need.
Listen, and I can definitely co-sign on that. Chandrea is definitely that person that if she cannot get you the answer, she is not going to rest until she gets you connected to the type of service that truly fits your need and your circumstance.
Absolutely.
So, man, definitely when she said, I'm on LinkedIn, hit me up, she really meant that.
I do.
Please do. Please do.
So you have, I know for what, we got one more question.
Okay. And I kind of touched on it a little bit. I said that I was going to ask you, after you did your reflection,
Mm-hmm.
after you had a chance to see a lot more clearly, because after victimization, there are things that we sit and ask, because as Black women, the first thing we want to know is how the fuck did that happen, and how do I make that never happen to me again? There's certain things as we're picking through that we realize certain thoughts and certain ideas and certain things that we'd like to see happen differently for us and even for other people. After those awareness moments happened, do you see specific ways that the abuse itself taught you something new, made you stronger in some way that you now are getting paid for?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm getting paid in so many ways. I'm getting paid just because I'm here. I thank my experience because I have purpose. I am very clear about my mission and my why I show up and do what I do every day. I get to have, I have been blessed to now have language so that I'm having different types of conversation. And I am doing two things. It's a Sankofa moment. I shared that with you because I get to look back and have conversations with my mother about ways that she has interrupted generational trauma, historical trauma. I get to have conversations with my aunties and my uncles, right? My elders, and talk to them and have conversation with them in a very different way.
Yes.
And because I'm creating a space of safety, authenticity, and trust, recognizing how we're breaking that. And then even through my children, but my goodness, to become a grandmother to a young Black girl and teach her very differently.
Yes.
Those are all, that's all payment for me. But the biggest payment I think is, for me, is my healing. That's the largest payment because, you know, you don't gain it to keep it, you gain it to give it. So as I gave myself permission, I was able to receive permission, and I was also able to provide spaces so other women would give themselves permission.
There it is.
Absolutely.
Man, permission. Crystal, did you find that helpful?
That's my baby sister. She found it helpful.
Yes. So yeah, you guys, the permission part, after the victimization, then give yourself the space to heal in the ways that matter to you.
Yeah.
She talked about the spaces where you go to tea or coffee. She talked about the spaces in church basements. She talked about the spaces in the traditional coalition. She talked about places like Courageous Fire LLC, Courageous Access, Forward Consulting. She talked about all these different kinds of ways, but don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself. Give yourself permission to do what it looks like. And you know what? I'm going to put this plug in here for us Black sisters. Give yourself permission to explore your spirituality. Look at numerology. Look at crystals. Look at your awareness. Look at your spirit realm. Stop thinking that everything that you don't understand is demonic. Look at your culture. Look at the ways that we learned to understand ourselves and the world around us, who we are in this realm and who we are in other realms. But grab your healing from wherever you need to get it from. The bottom line is give yourself permission to not stop till you get what you need. And look, and then give yourself permission to tell everybody else, forget you if you don't understand it. Forget you if you think I'm paranoid. Forget you if you think it's stupid. I don't care. It doesn't have to look good to you. It has to work for me. It has to work for me.
It has to work for you.
Look, and I'm hearing the professional telling me it has to work for you. I'm hearing the therapist tell me that's right. So listen, if y'all thought I might have been a little off-centered, I'm just telling you, I got people saying yes. This is what they do, okay?
I know I ain't rap type.
Don't play.
I'm cool with not being rap type.
So if you joined us today, you see why I call this Beautiful Gifts. Beautiful. It's beautiful when you meet someone just because they were introduced by someone that you mutually love and respect, but then the bonuses just kept coming. She's beautiful, she's loving, she's strong, she's knowledgeable on so many things that we as Black women need for healing. And so I know that you got blessed today to be able to sit here and listen and partake of her spirit. I'm so glad that you were able to do that. And sister, thank you.
Thank you.
For gifting me the way that you have ever since we met, and for trusting me for doing this together today.
Thank you for your authenticity. Thank you for your love. It's rare. I send a shout out.
Yeah, shout.
I just want to shout out all the beautiful Black women who have loved on me, who have provided wisdom, knowledge, whether it was for a reason, a season, or we are still in it together. Thank you. Brandy, I saw her. One day we'll talk. You've impacted my life probably in a way you don't even know, and that's the beauty in what I'm trying to convey. As we travel this life, folks will drop in, right? And they really impact you in the most, in some really big ways, and they don't know it. Not only do I thank all of the Black women in this community, thank you to my core group of friends, and I say that with conviction. Friendship is a term too loosely used.
Yes.
I don't have many, but the few I have mean so much to me, because that means you can handle, not only have you trusted me with your heart, but I have obviously trusted you with mine. But I know my co-laborers have been here, both past and present, and I want to thank you for being in the trenches with me. We got a lot of work to do, but know that as we work together, I work from a place not only professionally but personally, because it means that much to me to make sure that people get what they need in order to be their best self. So thank you, Courageous, my sister. Thank you, Brianne, my sister. And to all of y'all out there, I love you very much. I do. I love you. Take care of yourself. Give yourself grace and give yourself permission.
I love it. That's the closer right there, y'all. Love y'all.